Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. We love diving into complex topics here, and today we're tackling one that you guys specifically requested.
Oh, yeah.
The environmental impact of renewables, specifically solar panels and batteries.
Right.
We always hear about how green they are, but is it really that simple?
Well, it's definitely not that simple.
Okay, so let's break it down, starting with solar panels.
Okay.
Harnessing the power of the sun, that's got to be good, right? A clean, renewable energy source.
It is. It's definitely a step in the right direction, but there are some things that we don't always think about.
What do you mean?
Well, just the materials themselves, To make a solar panel, you need silicon, aluminum, silver.
Yeah.
All of these things have to be mined.
Right.
And a lot of times that mining happens in places where environmental regulations maybe aren't as strict.
So we're using fossil fuels to create clean energy.
Yeah, it's a bit ironic, isn't it?
That's crazy.
Think about it this way. To make the silicon pure enough for solar panels, it has to be heated to extremely high temperatures.
Oh, wow.
And that takes a massive amount of energy.
Yeah.
And where does that energy often come from? Fossil fuels.
It's kind of like using a gas-guzzling truck to deliver a salad.
Exactly. That's a great analogy.
But it gets even more complicated, right?
Yeah.
What happens to solar panels at the end of their life?
That's a really good point.
Because they don't last forever.
No, they don't.
So we have all these huge solar farms popping up everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens in 20, 25 years when all those panels need to be replaced?
So here's the thing. Only about 10% of solar panels are actually recycled.
10%?
10%.
Wow.
It's really difficult and expensive to recycle them properly.
Wow.
So a lot of them just end up in landfills.
So we're basically creating another waste problem while trying to solve an energy problem.
That's one way to look at it.
Okay, that's heavy stuff. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about batteries, because those are obviously super important for storing all that renewable energy.
Absolutely.
And we're talking mainly about lithium-ion batteries, right?
Yeah, lithium-ion batteries are the most common type for, storing the energy from your solar panels, wind turbines, all that.
Okay, so what's the environmental baggage that comes with these batteries?
Well, unfortunately, there is some.
Like what?
You need lithium, cobalt, nickel to make these batteries.
Right.
And mining those materials, that has a big impact.
Can you give us some specifics?
Yeah, for sure. One of the biggest issues is water consumption.
Okay.
Did you know that it takes about 500,000 liters of water?
Whoa, hold on. 500,000 liters.
500,000 liters of water to extract just 1 ton of lithium.
That's like an Olympic-sized swimming pool.
It is. It really is.
For 1 ton.
For 1 ton.
It's hard to believe that something so small,
Right.
like the battery in my phone, could require that much water.
Crazy to think about, right?
It is. And so all that water use,
Yeah.
that must be impacting local ecosystems, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, check this.
Especially in areas that are already dry, like parts of South America where a lot of this lithium mining happens.
So we're impacting entire ecosystems just to get the materials for these batteries.
Yeah, and it's not just the water either.
What else?
Mining operations often lead to habitat destruction,
Right.
which just adds to the strain on these delicate ecosystems.
And then there's also the human cost to consider.
Exactly. We can't forget about the people involved.
Right. The people who are actually mining these materials.
The working conditions in some cobalt mines, especially in parts of Africa, can be really, really bad.
Wow.
Workers are exposed to dangerous substances. They often have very unstable employment.
It's tough to reconcile that with this idea of clean energy.
It is. It's a complex issue.
It's a lot more complicated than I think a lot of people realize.
Yeah, definitely.
So it sounds like there's some tough questions we need to be asking ourselves about this transition to clean energy.
Yeah, it's not black and white, that's for sure.
Okay, well, what can we do to try and mitigate some of these negative impacts?
Well, for starters, we need to push for responsible sourcing
Okay.
and production practices.
Right.
Stricter environmental regulations for mining and manufacturing, those are essential.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like recycling is kind of a recurring theme here.
Yeah.
We're amazing at creating new technologies, but not so great at figuring out what to do with them when they're no longer useful.
It's a huge challenge for sure. But there is some exciting research happening in this area.
Like what?
For example, scientists are developing more environmentally friendly alternatives like organic solar cells
Oh, wow.
and different types of battery chemistries.
That sounds promising. Tell me more about these new developments.
Well, one really interesting area is perovskite Solar cells.
Perovskite.
They're different from traditional silicon solar cells because they're much thinner and more flexible, which makes them cheaper to produce.
Oh, interesting.
And they're potentially much more efficient at converting sunlight into electricity.
So these perovskite solar cells could be a game changer.
They really could.
What about these new battery technologies you mentioned?
Yeah, so there are a lot of advancements happening there, too.
Like what?
Researchers are experimenting with new battery chemistries that use materials that are more abundant and less harmful to the environment.
Right.
One example is solid-state batteries, which, they could potentially charge as quickly as your phone.
Whoa, that would be amazing.
Right.
Okay, so it sounds like these new technologies offer a lot of hope for the future.
They do. But it's important to remember that it's still early stages.
Right.
And there's a long way to go before these become widely available.
Yeah.
We need to keep pushing for their adoption.
Okay, so what can we do, what can our listeners do to help support these new technologies and push for a more sustainable future?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And that's something we'll dive into in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good.
So stay tuned.
All right, we'll be right back after a quick break. Welcome back to the deep dive. Before the break, we were talking about some pretty exciting new technologies that could really help us move towards a more sustainable energy future.
Right.
But I'm curious, besides all that, what can we do as individuals right now?
Oh, that's a great question.
Like, do our individual actions actually make a difference?
Absolutely, they do. It might seem small compared to these big global problems.
Right. But every little bit counts, right?
Yeah, exactly. Our individual actions can have a ripple effect.
Okay, so what are some practical things that our listeners can do in their daily lives?
Well, one of the most effective things is simply reducing your overall energy consumption.
Okay, so like being more mindful about turning off lights, unplugging electronics when I'm not using them.
All those little things really do add up.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then think about transportation, Can you walk or bike or take public transportation more often?
Right.
Even just 1 or 2 days a week can make a difference.
Those are really great suggestions.
Yeah.
I definitely need to work on that.
It all helps.
But I got to be honest, sometimes it feels like
Right.
my individual actions are just a drop in the ocean
I know what you mean.
compared to the scale of this problem.
It can feel overwhelming, for sure.
Yeah.
But remember, collective action starts with individual choices.
Okay.
The more people who adopt these sustainable practices, the greater the impact.
So it's about creating a cultural shift.
Exactly. It's about changing mindsets.
I like that.
Yeah.
A cultural change.
And I think our choices as consumers can also send a powerful message to companies and policymakers.
How so?
Well, when you choose to support businesses that prioritize, ethical sourcing and sustainable practices, you're essentially voting with your wallet.
Right.
And then there's also advocacy, right? Letting your elected officials know that you care about these issues, that you want to see real change.
Writing letters, making phone calls.
Exactly.
Attending town hall meetings.
All of that.
So it's not just about changing our light bulbs.
Right.
It's about changing the system itself.
Exactly. We need systemic change to address the root causes of these environmental problems.
I see what you mean.
We need to move away from this linear take, make, dispose model and shift towards a more circular economy.
So focusing more on resource efficiency and waste reduction.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, we've been talking a lot about the downsides of renewable energy.
Right.
But we can't ignore the fact that they're crucial in the fight against climate change.
Of course not.
So how do we reconcile these two seemingly conflicting ideas?
It's definitely complex.
It's like a tug of war in my brain sometimes.
I understand. It's not about abandoning renewables altogether.
Okay.
Renewables are a vital part of the solution.
Right.
But we need to be more aware of their full impact, both good and bad, and strive for a more holistic approach to sustainability.
So it's not just a simple either between renewables and fossil fuels.
Right. It's about recognizing that there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Okay. I'm starting to get it.
We need to diversify our energy sources, invest in innovation, and really embrace that circular economy model.
It sounds like a massive undertaking.
It is.
A little overwhelming, honestly.
I know, but it's a challenge we have to face head on.
You're right.
If we want to create a healthy planet for future generations.
This has been so insightful.
Oh, good.
It's clear that the transition to a truly sustainable energy future is going to be a long and complex journey.
It is. It is.
But it's a journey we're all on together.
And the more we know about the challenges and the
Right.
possibilities, the better equipped we'll be to make a positive impact.
I agree.
Okay, so we've covered a lot today.
Yeah, we have. We talked about the hidden costs of solar panels and batteries, the power of individual action,
Right.
the need for systemic change.
Yeah.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion,
I like that analogy.
revealing all the complexities underneath.
There's always more to learn, right?
Always.
So before we wrap up, I'm curious about your thoughts on the role of policy and regulation.
Okay.
What role do you think they play in driving this transition to a more sustainable energy future?
I think policy is absolutely crucial in setting the stage.
Mm-hmm.
Governments have the power to create incentives for businesses and individuals
Right.
to adopt these renewable energy technologies, to promote responsible sourcing practices,
Exactly.
and invest in R&D for new technology.
Yeah.
So it's about creating an environment where sustainable choices
Right.
are not only possible,
Yeah.
but also economically viable.
Exactly. It's about leveling the playing field so that renewable energy can compete with traditional fossil fuels. And that often requires a combination of incentives and regulations.
Can you give us some specific examples?
Yeah, sure. On the incentive side, governments can offer tax breaks or subsidies
Right.
to encourage people to, say, install solar panels or buy electric vehicles.
Makes sense.
They can also invest in public transportation infrastructure.
Right, making it easier for people to choose those alternatives.
Exactly.
And what about on the regulation side?
Well, regulations can be just as important,
Right.
For example, governments can set strict emission standards for power plants,
Yeah.
which forces them to reduce their reliance on coal and other fossil fuels.
Okay.
They can also implement policies that require manufacturers to use recycled materials in their products.
Right, so it's a multi-pronged approach
It is.
requiring collaboration from everyone involved.
Exactly.
This deep dive has really brought home the fact
Yeah.
that we're all interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
Our energy choices have these ripple effects that extend far beyond our own homes and communities.
Absolutely. We live in a complex, interconnected world,
We do.
and our actions have consequences that often reach far beyond our immediate sphere of influence.
I never thought of it that way.
It's a powerful reminder that we're all in this together,
Yeah.
and that we need to work collaboratively to find solutions that benefit both people and the planet.
Speaking of working together, what are your thoughts on international cooperation?
Oh, it's essential.
Really?
Absolutely.
Why?
We're talking about global problems here, climate change, resource depletion, pollution.
Right.
These require global solutions.
Right.
No single country can solve these challenges on its own.
So what does international cooperation look like in action?
Well, a great example is the Paris Agreement.
Oh, yeah.
It's an international treaty that aims to limit global warming.
Right.
It brings together almost 200 countries in a shared commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
So it's about countries setting aside their differences and working together towards a common goal.
Yes. It's about recognizing that we're all in the same boat and we need to row in the same direction.
That's such a great visual.
And it's not just about government-level agreements.
What else?
International cooperation can happen at all levels, from scientific research collaborations to grassroots movement.
That's encouraging to hear.
Yeah,
It gives me hope
you too.
that we can find solutions and create a more sustainable future.
I share your hope. Human ingenuity is incredible.
It is.
We've faced big challenges before, and we've always found ways to innovate and adapt.
That's true.
We have the knowledge, the technology, and the human spirit to create a more sustainable future.
Well said.
It's just a matter of harnessing those resources and working together.
I love that.
Yeah.
This conversation has been incredibly inspiring.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights and your passion with us today.
My pleasure. I always enjoy these opportunities to delve into these issues.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery.
Yes, thank you.
We hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and given you some food for thought as you navigate the complexities of energy choices and sustainable living.
It's a journey we're all on together.
Remember, every action, no matter how small, can contribute to a more sustainable future. All right, we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the hidden costs of renewables. We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we?
We have. It's amazing how much there is to unpack when we start talking about, going green and all that.
It's not as straightforward as it seems at first glance, is it?
Not at all.
We started off talking about the environmental impacts of things like solar panels and batteries.
Right, all those things we usually associate with clean energy.
Exactly. And we found out that there's a whole other side to the story when it comes to things like mining and water consumption.
Definitely things to consider.
And then we talked about what we can do as individuals, how even small changes in our daily lives can contribute to a more sustainable future.
Yeah, those little things really do add up.
And we can't forget the importance of things like policy changes and international cooperation, right?
Absolutely crucial for addressing these global challenges.
It's like we need action at every level, from individual choices to global agreements.
That's exactly it. It's a multifaceted problem that needs a multifaceted solution.
So before we wrap up, what's the one message you really want our listeners to take away from this deep dive?
That's a good question. I think the most important thing is this. Don't just take things at face value.
Okay, I like that.
Be curious, ask questions and do your own research.
That's what we try to do here on the deep dive, right? We try to go beyond the headlines and explore those deeper layers.
That's it. The more informed we are, the better choices we can make.
And it's not about being perfect or knowing all the answers, is it?
No, not at all.
It's about continuously learning, constantly trying to do better.
Exactly, and it's about understanding that we're all in this together.
That's right. Sustainability isn't just an individual effort. It's a collective one.
We all have a role to play in creating a healthier planet for ourselves and for future generations.
Well said. This conversation has been incredibly enlightening. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
It's been my pleasure. I always enjoy opportunities to talk about these important topics.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this episode has challenged your thinking and empowered you to make more informed choices. And remember, sustainability is a journey, not a destination. We're all in this together, and every step we take, no matter how small, makes a difference.